Hi, I'm Kili, also known as Kelly.
And I'm Feely, also known as Alex,
Welcome to our corner of the Shire,
where we will show you how to bring Middle Earth
into your daily life to keep you
a happy hobbit.
Welcome to this episode of Happy Hobbit. I am here in my Hobbit garden as the sun sets on a beautiful warm summer's day, and I am about to harvest and dry some catnip that I can use both for catnip tea and for kitties. Previously we did an episode on cat pipeweed, which was how to make a dried catnip treat for your cat. It was one of the few episodes that Daggerlad was heavily involved with, and it's really funny. Unfortunately, both of our kitties in that video have passed on, but we do have another kitty. She is a feral, and she adopted us, is how we tell the story. She wouldn't even let anyone pet her when she first started coming around. And in fact, once again, you may recall, I did a video on making a cat house for a feral cat because I was trying to give her a cozy place to live when she wasn't very tame. I'm happy to say that she is now the cuddliest, most snuggliest, sweetest girl I've ever met. She is a fantastic hunter. She always has her wits about her because she did grow up out in the wilds. And when we first met her, she didn't understand what petting was and didn't want to be touched. And slowly over time, largely my mom, or Mama Hobbit, or Mama Dees, acclimated her to being stroked, and now she can't get enough of it. And we love her dearly. Her name is Fluffers, and she also loves catnip. In fact, I was just reading that about 2/3 of cats respond to catnip. There are some cats who it just doesn't seem to do anything for them. But you may find it surprising to learn that humans, hobbits, elves, probably even dwarves can benefit from ingesting catnip in different ways. It has traditionally been used dried and in teas, and has been highly valued for its calming, anti-anxiety, sedative effects. And that is what I am going to show you how to make. The bed beside me, that's haloed very beautifully by the sunset lighting, is meant to be our bed for summer squash and for watermelon. And I'm quite proud because I grew them all from seed. However, as you can see, it's being threatened to be taken over by borage and by catnip, which I will show you up close in a moment. So since I'm not growing this catnip for pollinators, you can't see it, I'll show you in a moment. Behind the camera is literally a wall of catnip. It grows really well here, it really likes it here, that I do just grow for pollinators. And so I'm going to go ahead and harvest this catnip because it's getting ready to bloom. And once it blooms, it'll start finishing up this cycle of its life. And it's better if you want to use an herb such as catnip for a medicinal use or for consumption to try to harvest it before it flowers. Here is the vegetable bed in its entirety. As you can see, there are some happy summer squash mixed with nasturtiums, which are also edible, by the way, and in fact populate most of the Hobbiton that we see in the films. And then we have catnip popping up and borage. Absolutely beautiful, stunning plants that the bees love. Here's one eating right now. Catnip is in the mint family. It is known as a nepeta, and it contains a compound, probably not going to pronounce it properly, nepetalactone, which is commonly used as a sedative, or it has sedative properties, and there are many folk remedies that use catnip tea to help soothe digestive issues, both in adults and in babies with colic. And as I said earlier, it's also purported to help just reduce stress and help your body relax. My theory is that it somehow helps promote the rest and digest state of the nervous system, which of course is the ideal state we'd all like to be in. And for these reasons, as much as I think hobbits probably would benefit from catnip tea, it really feels elven to me, and so I call this my hobbit garden, and it very much is a hobbity garden, but I am not opposed to welcoming other denizens of Middle-earth. And I could also quite easily imagine rangers making brews from plants that are common, such as catnip, because they are just so prolific and readily available for harvesting. I planted 1 or 2 borage plants, maybe a few more the first year when I first started gardening, before I really knew what I was doing. Definitely only a handful of catnip plants, and now they're in danger of taking over the entire garden. So they really are some of those plants that you only really need to plant once, and they'll be very prolific with their self-sowing. Little known fact is that borage, like catnip, is completely edible. But as you can see, the borage in the catnip are quite tall, and what they're actually doing is shading out the summer squash plants. And I'm going to go ahead and leave the borage because it is so pollinator friendly. And instead, I'm going to start harvesting the catnip. You can see right here, this little flower head is forming. And on this plant, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, nearly every stem has a flower head that's going to form. You have a look at the back wall of the garden with a cameo by our trusty old tripod. Yes, that's a stick trying to make it work properly. That's a Hobbit hack for you. It is just a wall of catnip. This catnip is starting to wind down. It had been in full flower, but as you can see, the bees still very much are enjoying it. This catnip has already finished flowering, and it's going to form hundreds of little tiny seeds that will scatter about and be eaten by birds. To harvest the catnip, you can use some pruners, or you can even just use your own hands, but it doesn't always work so well. This bit down here is really floppy, so what I'm going to do is just pinch it off right down here, because you see this section where there are twin sets of leaves coming off? Those are growth points. So if I pinch it off right there, what's going to happen is as the plant regrows, it's going to shoot off 2 separate stalks. And it'll make for a much bushier plant. So this is a tactic that you can use not just with catnip, but with any plant or herb that you're growing in your garden to try to cultivate a much bushier, leafier produce. It also smells really weird. It kind of smells like pipeweed, if you know what I'm talking about. It's got a very musky, skunky smell. But here is my leafy little bit of catnip, and in theory I could just eat it raw. I have tried it raw before. Doesn't really excite me that much raw. I've also made tea with it fresh without drying it, but I would like to show you how to dry it. So I'm going to keep harvesting, and then we'll move on to the next step. So here I am with a wonderfully soft, fuzzy, fluffy bunch of fresh catnip. Now the next step is to rinse it off in the sink and then let it air dry. And then I'm going to bundle it and hang it to dry. The next step is to take your catnip, once it has dried, and form it into a bunch. Now this catnip is a little more dry than I intended. That's because I, as often happens, started this project and then left to go down to San Diego Comic-Con, which is actually only a few days. It's a Wednesday through a Sunday, but then I added a 2-day visit to a dear friend of mine who lives down there and her family, because I hadn't seen her or her children for a long time. One of the children was about to turn 4 while I was there, so it was very special. And then I came home and I had COVID. So that's why I'm in my room now. I'm trying to keep myself to myself. And what I was just doing as I was chatting away there was arranging the stems, arranging the stems so that they're relatively even. Then I'm just gonna take a rubber band and secure it. It did take about 3 days, I want to say, for these to properly dry. I was surprised by that. I had to keep rotating them on the cloth. So now I'm just gonna take a paper sack and write a label on it. So I'm gonna write catnip, and then today's date, which is, wow, already August 3rd. And I keep forgetting to look at the lens, and I'm looking to make sure everything I'm holding is in frame. And then you put it into your paper bag. And the reason for using the paper bag is to not only keep dust and light from getting on it, but also as it dries, little bits might fall off. So it also just makes it a little bit tidier. Right now it's in an in-between stage. It's starting to dry, it's starting to get crispy, but it's not crispy enough that things are going to fall off. So then you're going to make a seal at the top of the bag. And this is where you'll need another. That's actually my hair tie. I forgot I needed 2 rubber bands. But I'll have to put my mask on to go out to get another one. So for right now, it's going to be my hair tie. And one thing I've done in the past is blown air in to puff it up a little bit. So you have it secure in your paper sack. And now, to let it breathe, because you do want the moisture to be able to go out, you can take scissors or anything else sharp and just puncture some holes in it. need too many. Just something to help the air come out, in and out and flow. And I didn't take the time to find them before I started filming, but I actually have bags like this that I just keep reusing and just cross it out and write what the new herb is. So now you can either just set it down. That's what's nice about the lunch sacks. You could just set it down somewhere and let it continue to dry, or you can hang it up somewhere. I like to hang stuff up in my closet because, especially flowers, if I'm drawing flowers, because the less light that gets on them, the better, the more they'll preserve their color. But with catnip, I'm not quite as concerned, and I'll just put it somewhere out of the way and then check on it in about a month and see how dry it is. It has now been roughly a month since I harvested this catnip. And gosh, does that bed in the garden look different. But what I have here is a jar, and you can use any kind of container. I like using these glass jars, but you could also use a Ziploc bag or a reusable bag. I try to use reusable things whenever I can. So let's see what it looks like. So this is what the dried catnip looks like. You can tell it's a little flat from hitting the bottom of the bag. But it looks great. And what I'm gonna do is pick off the leaves and put them into my jar. Wow, there's actually nothing in this bag. So there weren't really many crumbly bits. This can be a very tedious process. But all I'm doing is just picking off the leaves. If you were going to use this catnip for a cat toy or a cat treat, you wouldn't have to be as careful. Not that I'm being particularly careful, but you wouldn't have to be as finicky about it. You could just crunch it all up because the kitty cat's not going to care about the stems. And quite frankly, for the tea, I'm not so worried about stems either, but my focus is definitely on the leaves. Oops. I'm excited to be doing this today, because as you could probably tell by my change in attire from the last time you saw me, we are having a little bit of weather move through now that it's August. And while we don't get particularly cold in this corner of the Shire in the autumn, we do get the occasional little bit of weather passing through. Growing up, we traditionally had a rainstorm or a thunderstorm either at the end of August or the start of September, and it seems that we're continuing that pattern today. It is not that cold, but I was just at the coast and it was much chillier and windier there. And I thought this would be the perfect time to not only finish up this catnip, but to have some catnip tea. I only recently had it confirmed to me that in the more eastern parts of Middle-earth or the Shire, it does properly start to cool down in the autumn, and that's a foreign concept to me because even here in the more northern part of the California Shire, autumn is often an extension of summer, and it can sometimes have our hottest days. So as I've just always been really envious of seeing like pumpkin sweaters and stuff and wanting to put on autumnal attire, but it's just too hot. I think it would actually weirdly be more appropriate to have like a pumpkin tank top or at least a pumpkin t-shirt. All these little bits going onto the ground I'll probably give to fluffers. I already have pretty much half a jar. I'm gonna have to keep tamping it down to make room for the rest. Full jar of dried catnip that I can use for my catnip tea. And a nice cuppa sounds delicious about now, so let's go make one. All these little bits that fell, they can go to Fluffers, because as you saw, she really loves catnip. To make tea, you'll need hot water, a mug, and of course, your tea leaves. And sadly, you have to ignore that flourless chocolate cake in the background. It's part of Mama Deese's, or Mama Hobbit's, birthday celebrations. I'm making that for her. You'll need something like this, a little tea strainer. And all you do is open it up and add your tea leaves. And then let it close. Unfortunately, ours is old and it has a little gap, which means that I sometimes end up having little bits of whatever I'm using as tea floating around in my cup, but I actually don't really mind. And you just put it in your mug and add your hot water. You can let it steep for however long you like, but as a general rule, about 5 minutes. Now, all that's left is to enjoy your tea in your cozy hobbit hole. It has a very light flavor, very light. Now, albeit I didn't pack that many leaves into the little tea strainer thing. There are other ways you can do it. You can have like an infusion ball, or you can put the leaves on a little strainer on top and pour the hot water through. But I like this because I feel like it keeps brewing the whole time that I'm drinking it. And it just has a light, kind of planty flavor. As you can see, it's not really changing the color of the hot water. Oops, that much. So of course it lends itself to blending with other herbs and spices as well. But it is absolutely lovely, and for now I'm going to relax and enjoy my cozy cup of catnip tea and reap all of the benefits that it has. I hope this episode has left you a happy hobbit, and if you want to try your hand at growing your own catnip from seed, it's not that hard. If all you need is a little pot, sprinkle some seeds and some dirt in the spring, and tend it all through the summer, and you too can have your very own tea made from your very own hobbit garden and hobbit apothecary. Thank you so much for watching. Please do like and subscribe, and more importantly, share this video or our channel with someone who you think would appreciate it. feels so weird all the time. Saying it feels so weird. Now the reason... But I'm also a weirdo and I don't mind the little bits that creep around inside too. That sounded weird. I look like I'm in a jungle. It does smell really good. I should give some to fluffers.
This weekly got us. Here, Fluff. You can have it right here. Yeah. Oh, princess. That was quite the performance, Angel. Yeah. That's a hair tie. Yeah, where'd that come from? I see it's a treasure.